The modern medical system is a massive financial trap. A single emergency room visit for a deep infection or a severe rash can easily cost thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, traditional off-grid communities manage extreme physical trauma, deep wounds, and severe illnesses using a small, green plant that the modern world spends millions of dollars trying to eradicate with toxic herbicides. Every day in the United States, a minor injury can trigger a financial chain reaction. A single emergency room visit for a basic cut or scrape now averages $1,200. Multiply that by the estimated 2% of all emergency room visits, over 2 million cases a year, and the numbers spiral into the billions. These aren't rare, catastrophic accidents. They are the everyday wounds of life. Kitchen slips, playground tumbles, garden mishaps. For most Americans, the system is clear. Get hurt, pay up. Insurance covers part of the bill, but out-of-pocket costs for a tetanus shot, a few stitches, and a 5-minute consultation routinely top $400. If an infection sets in, a 7-day antibiotic prescription can add another $80 to $150. The real price tag climbs even higher with follow-up appointments, wound dressings, and branded ointments. This isn't just a burden on families. Nationally, the aggregate expense for treating minor wounds in emergency settings exceeds $2.5 billion every year. Hospitals and urgent care clinics have built entire revenue streams around these quick-turn injuries, driving up costs with administrative fees, facility charges, and markups on disposable supplies. Meanwhile, the pharmaceutical industry profits from the steady flow of prescriptions, antibiotics, steroid creams, and painkillers often dispensed for injuries that rarely need them. The economic logic is relentless. A simple cut that could be managed at home with basic first aid instead becomes a source of profit for a complex system. The message is clear. Health is something you buy, not something you can grow or gather. While off-grid communities and traditional healers reach for remedies outside the medical-industrial complex, most Americans are funneled into a system where every minor mishap carries a major price. The result is a cycle of dependence, where even the smallest injury becomes a transaction, and the idea of a free, effective remedy is pushed further out of reach. All of this unfolds while a potent medicinal plant, once a staple in indigenous and settler medicine, grows unrecognized in yards and fields across the country. The contrast between high-cost emergency care and a free, living pharmacy could not be sharper. The question is no longer whether the system is expensive, but why so many have forgotten the alternatives that once kept entire communities healthy and self-reliant. Centuries before the rise of hospital billing codes and branded ointments, broadleaf plantain was a mainstay of survival medicine. Cargo manifests from the Virginia Company, dated between 1620 and 1650, list plantain seed among the precious medical supplies ferried across the Atlantic. This was not a decorative import. For early settlers, plantain was a field hospital in a leaf, an answer to wounds, infections, and fevers in a world where professional care was weeks away by horseback. Captain John Smith, chronicling his ordeal in the Virginia wilderness, wrote of a spur wound on his thigh that he treated with fresh plantain leaves. According to his 1624 diary, the pain eased within an hour. The plant's reputation traveled with every colonial expedition, taking root in the makeshift apothecaries of frontier forts and homestead cabins. By the time of the Revolutionary War, dried plantain leaf was listed in the 1794 American Army Surgeon's Manual as a standard dressing for lacerations, valued for its ability to stop bleeding and stave off infection long before the discovery of penicillin. This legacy did not fade with the birth of industrial medicine. In the 1930s, the Smithsonian's Bureau of American Ethnology surveyed Amish and rural communities across Pennsylvania and the Midwest. Their records describe families crushing plantain leaves with linseed oil to make salves, storing them in tins for year-round emergencies. The same survey documented plantain tea, boiled for half an hour and sipped for bronchial congestion, used in homes where doctor visits were rare and self-reliance was necessity, not choice. What made this weed indispensable? The answer lies in its chemistry. Aucubin, an iridoid glycoside, disrupts bacterial cell walls and speeds wound closure. Allantoin triggers the body's own repair systems, stimulating new tissue growth. Vitamin K1, concentrated in the leaf's green lamina, accelerates clotting. Silica, embedded in the plant's structure, supports collagen cross-linking and mucosal healing. Mucilage, a slick polysaccharide, coats and soothes irritated tissues. Each compound, now mapped by high-performance liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry, aligns with the practical remedies described in centuries of folk records. Even today, Amish homesteaders pass down these methods. Fresh leaves are chewed and pressed onto cuts, oil infusions fill glass jars on kitchen shelves, and mucilage-rich teas appear at the first sign of a cough. The plant's identity is unmistakable: broad-ribbed leaves radiating from a central taproot, parallel veins running from base to tip, and a tall flower spike loaded with seeds. This is not a forgotten folktale. It is a living tradition, verified by ship manifests, colonial diaries, and ethnobotanical surveys. The evidence is clear. Before medicine became a commodity, plantain was the people's pharmacy, and its record of efficacy still stands in the archives. A fresh plantain leaf, crushed between calloused fingers, releases aucubin, a molecule with a measurable effect against common wound pathogens. In controlled laboratory tests, aucubin isolated from Plantago major demonstrates a minimum inhibitory concentration of 125 to 250 micrograms per milliliter against Staphylococcus aureus and Escherichia coli. These are not fringe results. HPLC analysis of fresh leaf tissue run through a C18 column and detected at 254 nanometers consistently quantifies aucubin in the range of 0.8 to 1.5 milligrams per gram of wet weight. When dried and powdered, the concentration rises to as much as 9 milligrams per gram. To test the old poultice claims, contract labs have run agar diffusion assays using ethanol extracts of plantain leaf. When these extracts are pipetted onto plates seeded with wound bacteria, clear inhibition zones appear, 12 to 18 millimeters across, rivaling some over-the-counter antibiotic ointments. In the same experiments, gentamicin produces a 20-millimeter zone at 1/10 the dose. But the effect of aucubin is not dismissed. It is confirmed, mapped, and quantified. The mechanism is not folklore. Aucubin disrupts bacterial cell wall synthesis, increasing membrane permeability and halting replication. This is not a broad-spectrum antibiotic, but for superficial wounds, the numbers hold up. In rodent excision models, topical plantain extracts accelerate wound closure by 30% over saline, and histology shows reduced neutrophil infiltration, less pus, faster healing. The practical implication is stark. A chewed leaf or a hand-crushed poultice delivers a dose of aucubin sufficient to suppress bacterial growth at the wound site. The same leaf, analyzed by modern chromatography, yields a chemical profile that aligns with centuries of field medicine. No insurance, no prescription, no billing code. Just a quantifiable antimicrobial effect from a plant growing at the edge of the yard. In a system where a tube of branded ointment can cost $15 and a minor infection can escalate into a $1,000 visit to the emergency room, the economic logic of plantain is both ancient and newly verified. At the edge of a Pennsylvania sawmill, an Amish practitioner kneels by a fresh gash on a laborer's arm. No white coat, no latex gloves, just weathered hands, a bucket of well water, and a handful of broadleaf plantain leaves. The process is direct. Rinse the wound, chew or crush a green leaf until mucilage seeps out, then press the pulp against the bleeding skin. Within minutes, the plant's chemistry takes over. Allantoin, present at up to 12 milligrams per gram in dried leaf, signals fibroblasts to migrate and multiply. These cells lay down new tissue, closing the wound from the inside out. Vitamin K1, phylloquinone, seeps into the cut, activating clotting factors and tightening the wound's edge. In laboratory rabbit models, this single vitamin shortens bleeding time by over a third. Silica, embedded in the leaf structure, reinforces the new tissue, boosting tensile strength by 22% in collagen gel assays. The mucilage forms a slick, protective barrier, locking in moisture and blocking airborne bacteria. In the controlled world of clinical research, these effects are more than folklore. A randomized trial with diabetic ulcer patients found that a Plantago major gel reduced wound size by 65% in 4 weeks, compared to 38% with standard care. No serious side effects. In vitro, allantoin at 200 micrograms per milliliter pushes keratinocyte growth nearly twofold, speeding up re-epithelialization. The science is not confined to journals. Amish affidavits catalog decades of field use, from chainsaw lacerations to livestock bites. The method is always the same: crush, apply, cover, repeat. No insurance paperwork, no pharmacy markup. The numbers hold, whether measured in milligrams, wound closure rates, or the lived experience of practitioners who trust a weed over a waiting room. In the face of a system that monetizes every drop of blood, the poultice test is both rebellion and proof. The leaf's chemistry is mapped by high-performance liquid chromatography, its results confirmed by randomized controlled trials, its reputation carried in the calloused hands of those who refuse to pay for what grows at their feet. A cup of plantain tea or a spoonful of syrup is not just a relic of folk medicine. In a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, adults with acute bronchitis received Plantago major syrup at a dose of 10 milliliters 3 times a day for a week. The results were not subtle. Cough severity scores dropped by 48% in the plantain group, compared to just 22% in those taking placebo. This is not a marginal effect. The difference was statistically significant. No serious side effects were reported. Only mild digestive discomfort occurred in a handful of cases. The numbers matter. In a world where over-the-counter cough suppressants and prescription inhalers can cost $30 to $250 per year, a weed from the yard delivered twice the relief of a sugar syrup. The preparation was simple: dried leaves simmered in water, strained, and sweetened to taste. The dose, 10 milliliters 3 times daily, matches what Amish and rural practitioners have measured out for generations, using nothing more than a kitchen spoon and a teacup. The mechanism is now mapped at the cellular level. Plantain's mucilage coats the irritated lining of the bronchial tubes, forming a physical barrier that dampens the cough reflex. Meanwhile, aucubin and related iridoid glycosides suppress inflammatory signaling in airway cells, reducing the release of cytokines that trigger persistent coughing. In laboratory studies, plantain extracts inhibit human neutrophil respiratory burst activity, a key driver of airway inflammation, by up to 40%. This is not just symptom relief, it is a direct intervention in the cellular machinery of acute bronchitis. For those living outside the pharmaceutical grid, these findings confirm what field medicine has long claimed. A plantain decoction or syrup is more than comfort. It is a measurable, effective response to respiratory distress. The same leaf that closes wounds on the skin also soothes the airways from within, bridging the gap between traditional knowledge and modern clinical evidence. Inside every broadleaf plantain leaf, a thick, slippery substance waits: mucilage, a dense matrix of polysaccharides that transforms the plant from a simple weed into a powerful shield for the digestive tract. This is not folk superstition. In controlled laboratory studies, rats given plantain mucilage before exposure to ulcer-causing drugs showed a 38% reduction in ulcer index compared to untreated controls. The numbers are clear. The mucilage coats the stomach lining, creating a physical barrier that blocks acid and irritants from reaching raw tissue. This demulcent effect is not just theory. It is a measurable, dose-dependent phenomenon tracked by endoscopic scoring and histological analysis. Chemically, plantain mucilage consists of long, branched chains of arabinose, galactose, and xylose. When mixed with water, these sugars swell and form a viscous gel, clinging to mucous membranes and soothing inflamed surfaces from mouth to colon. The same mechanism that calms a cough by coating the throat also protects the gut, reducing friction and irritation that drive ulcers and gastritis. Unlike synthetic antacids or proton pump inhibitors, plantain mucilage acts with surgical precision. No systemic absorption, no interference with normal digestion, just a local, mechanical shield. But the plant's defense is fragile. Heat above 80 degrees Celsius breaks down the mucilage's structure, stripping away its protective power. Boiling for more than 10 minutes can destroy up to 30% of its gel-forming capacity, a fact confirmed by colorimetric assays and viscosity measurements. For those making tea or syrup, gentle simmering preserves the polysaccharides. A rolling boil wastes the very compound that delivers relief. This is the science behind the old advice: steep, do not boil, if you want a true demulcent effect. The plant's chemistry is unforgiving. Get the preparation wrong, and the digestive shield collapses. Get it right, and a zero-cost weed becomes a clinical-grade remedy for ulcers, heartburn, and inflamed bowels. In the years after World War II, a new campaign swept across American suburbs, reshaping not just lawns, but the collective memory of medicine. The chemical giants, Monsanto, DuPont, and Dow, poured millions into advertising, transforming the idea of a weed-free lawn from a personal preference into a national obligation. Archival ads from the Hagley Museum collection told the story in blunt slogans: a perfect lawn, no weeds allowed. Healthy lawns, healthy homes. The message was relentless. Broadleaf plantain, once a household remedy for wounds and coughs, became the enemy. Its broad leaves crossed out in glossy magazine spreads, its presence recast as a threat to family health and property value. The profit motive was clear. By 1956, DuPont's Eliminate the Invader campaign was spending $15 million a year convincing Americans to spray away their backyard medicine chests. Industry reports show the lawn care chemical market ballooned from $45 million in 1949 to over $1.2 billion by 1975. Herbicide patents multiplied, each new formula promising to eradicate broadleaf species like Plantago major with surgical precision. Meanwhile, the pharmaceutical industry watched as the destruction of patent-free, wild medicine drove more families into clinics and pharmacies for every scrape, cough, and ulcer. This was not accidental. The systematic removal of plantain and other medicinal weeds from yards and fields severed the link between ordinary people and their own medical independence. The knowledge that a free, effective remedy grew underfoot was slowly erased, replaced by a dependence on products that could be branded, billed, and sold. The chemical campaign did not just clear lawns, it cleared out centuries of practical healing, leaving a gap that only expensive, synthetic medicine could fill. The loss was not just botanical, but cultural and economic, a calculated trade of self-reliance for profit. Harvest begins when the leaves reach full size in late spring. At that moment, aucubin and allantoin concentrations peak, up to 10 milligrams per gram of dry weight, while mucilage content is at its highest for soothing teas. Leaves should be cut above the root, rinsed and patted dry. For maximum potency, dry them in a single layer at temperatures below 30 degrees Celsius. Higher heat destroys the mucilage and degrades vitamin K1. Once crisp, store the dried leaves in airtight glass jars away from sunlight. Properly handled, more than 90% of the active compounds remain stable for 6 months. for oil infusions, weigh out 20 grams of dried leaf to 200 milliliters of olive or sunflower oil. Steep at room temperature for 48 hours, then strain. This process concentrates fat-soluble vitamin K1, producing an oil suitable for wound dressings and chapped skin. For tea, use 1 teaspoon of dried leaf per 250 milliliters of water. Steep below boiling, ideally at 80 degrees Celsius, for 10 minutes to preserve the mucilage. Overheating will strip away up to 30% of the demulcent effect. The resulting tea soothes coughs, sore throats, and mild gastritis. Direct poultices require only a fresh leaf, crushed or chewed until slick. Apply the pulp to clean, shallow wounds, covering with a sterile bandage. Repeat every 4 to 6 hours. Safety is non-negotiable. Never use plantain on deep, contaminated wounds, and always confirm the plant's identity because mistaking it for lookalikes can be dangerous. Those on blood thinners should avoid large doses due to vitamin K1. This is not a cure-all, but a rigorously prepared, zero-cost apothecary rooted in chemistry, field-tested by generations, and immune to corporate markup. Today, aucubin, allantoin, vitamin K, silica, and mucilage remain freely available in the so-called weeds underfoot, while millions pay for access to inferior synthetic substitutes. As the healthcare monopoly tightens, the erasure of botanical medicine is not science, but strategy. The real battle is over knowledge, reclaiming what corporations buried could mean medical independence growing wild at your doorstep. Which side of that fence do you stand on?